Revanth Rao, and I'm here with some of the people from Fizz Animation Studios. So, you guys want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Brandon Krish. I am a junior at Los Gatos High School.
Okay. I'm Devin Krish. I'm a freshman at Los Gatos High School.
I'm Shreyas Ravi. I'm a junior at Saratoga High School.
Okay, thanks guys. So, can you explain to people what you're doing here with your animation studio during this quarantine?
Well, Shreyas and I had an idea. Shreyas had all of these little bits of animation that we were going to use for projects, but that we never got around to using. And we also had ideas for other projects that we wanted to do. So we figured, since we're in quarantine, now's a better time than ever to get those projects done and maybe provide some joy for people during this difficult time. Trace, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, basically we're just trying to provide some entertainment to people during these trying times. So we're like trying to do like one a week for people to enjoy.
Okay, so where can people check out the work you're doing?
They can check it out on our... We don't upload them on YouTube because they are pretty short. They are definitely made more for social media. So when you're like scrolling through something that just catches your attention for like, a minute or so. So you can find it on our Twitter, our Facebook, and our Instagram.
Okay. So who is the inspiration behind this, and whose idea was it to do this, really?
It was kind of everyone. Trace, do you remember how this kind of...
I think it was kind of it kind of just started out of the blue. Like it was bits and pieces lying around, and then we just thought that we could put together some short things that could get out weekly. I think that's how it started.
I remember we were in the car because my dad was doing some grocery shopping, and I was in the car with him, and then Shreyas just started sending me these little clips of what he was doing during quarantine, and I had been working on stuff as well, and so we figured it would be the best of both worlds if we could just get together. And then he had been composing music in his free time. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I have been composing to their animation, and I really think it helps the animation. The animation itself really kind of gives a beautiful story, and even though each short is only a minute long, it provides great entertainment, and I think with music it just brings it to the next level. So.
Yeah, Trace and I were talking about that because Trace would have like this beautiful animation that we worked on together, which I've read the question, so we'll get to that a little bit later, but we'll talk about that a little later. But Trace and I had done this piece, and the animation was good, but we didn't want there to be dialogue because we thought it would ruin it. And he composed the score, and the way the score worked is for one of the short films called Square Up, which we'll get into a little bit later, he like gave each shape like
a different theme
and a different sound. So when the ball bounces in, that's the start of the ball's theme, and then the triangle has its own theme, and then the square has its own theme. And I remember Shreyas was like the first to point out the fact that like, oh, this I like the way Shreyas said it. Kind of, it was like, this is the movie's dialogue. Since there is no dialogue, this music is the dialogue of the short. Yeah.
So, like, what role do each of you have making these films?
Do you want to kind of tell them the process?
Yeah, we'll tell them the process. Trace, you want to start, though?
Well, for these first few ones that we've been doing, Brandon usually comes up with the story for it, and then I do most of the animation. And when I'm doing the animation, I make like little tweaks to the story to make it a little more appealing and make it a little more interesting to animate. And then I think when we're done with all the animation, it goes to Devin for music.
Yeah, and then your animation.
Yeah, I do a little bit of the animation too, and then I edit it and get it ready. Shreyas is really good at like action stuff. So for example, we're working on a short film right now that was largely Trace's idea, which was about an ice cube, and we won't say too much about it, but it's really great what Trace has done with like the way that ice cube moves and everything. And then I'm really good at the facial features. So Trace is like strong at like actually like creating like a set and like creating the movements of the characters. But I'm really strong with the facial features. He's great at the music. And so it's kind of like a team that like works really well. And so what'll happen is these things need to be done in a week. So let's just say we have a short film that's 75% done, and it's going to be released this Saturday. It's going to be released this Saturday, and so Shrey's finished his part of the animation. Now I'm doing my part of the animation. Devin has a kind of score laid out for
a
it.
theme laid out for it, and then on day 6 of day 7, I finished scoring the animation.
And he finishes scoring it. Meanwhile, Shrey's is already working on next week's, and so when it comes to me, it's gonna be like sometime next week, and then I'm gonna have to do my thing, and then he's gonna have to do his part. And so really, we have 7 days to make each of these, but we use our time wisely, so we can.
We're always 7 days ahead.
So we're always at least 7 days ahead, and Shrey's can tell you this, like, and even you know this, how long it took to make Fizz and Right and Wrong, right? And so this is definitely a much better change of pace, because rather than spending a year and a half on one short film, we're all able to spend 7 days, and maybe in the span of like 3 months, able to get done like a lot more content, and it's pretty great.
So, in terms of like the story or the music, even like, do you guys ever have disagreements over something, and how do you resolve those?
Constantly.
Yeah. Shrey, do you want to answer this?
So I think story-wise, Brandon and I have a lot of disagreements. So usually what would happen is Brandon comes up with one part of the story, and then I give an idea that I think might be better, and then we usually just go back and forth debating whether is this a good idea for the audience or not. Because the thing is, like, we're making it, so when we're doing it, we don't know how it's gonna be perceived from the audience, since we know like everything behind the scenes and all that. So we have to make sure that whatever we include in the story is like proper for the audience to view and for them to understand correctly.
What about you? First music.
Well, okay, I will say for our most recent short film, Stringing Along, I think my original score, I think, 5 or 6 times, I was told to redo it. And I'm glad that happened, though, because the final product did turn out a lot better. Yeah.
I think that's the big thing, right? Because as we're making these, we've never done short form before. We've always been like 3 or 5 minutes. So this is a bit of an adjustment for us, a bit of a challenge to tell more self-contained stories a lot quicker. I think our biggest thing is taking the viewer feedback in, because we don't want to make something that's close to our heart and something that we personally believe in, but we want to make sure other people understand that. So like our first short film, Square Up, we all loved it, and even Shreyas was like, this looks really good. But we found out a lot of people didn't understand it, and so what we're trying to do, and we kind of fixed this with the short film that followed, Stringing Along, and we're definitely fixing it with the short coming out this Saturday, which is called Arctic Explosion. We're definitely fixing that, but it's all about constantly improving the process to make sure people understand the story, the message, and the moral, because all these stories are supposed to have an underlying theme that people in quarantine right now should be able to look at and be like, oh, I understand that And some of those themes that we're exploring in the upcoming short films, not so much in Square Up and not so much in Stringing Along, but some of the ones we're exploring in the upcoming short films, they touch on themes that are important right now. Yeah.
Who has final say in any of this, or is it just collectively you make a decision?
All of us have final say. I think usually in terms of like animation action, I'll give Shreyas a lot of final say.
Story.
In story, I think I'll have final say, and then music is kind of up for grabs because he has a lot of ideas that are usually all really good, but you want to make sure that it's because it's really the backbone of the story, the music. So you want to make sure it propels the story forward and it keeps it going.
Yeah, and whoever is in charge of that short will have the final say in the music.
Yeah,
so I'll tweak my compositions to their liking.
Yeah, so Shreyas is working on a short right now, like I said, about an ice cube. And for that one, he gets most of the final say because it's his film. And for something like Arctic Explosion, or we're working on a Fizzy sequel right now about what Fizzy and Splurge are doing during quarantine, I'll get more final say. So it depends on the person who started the project and who's leading the project on. Yeah.
So with these shorts that you're releasing, recently, what's the goal behind this? Like, what are you trying to achieve by making them?
Trace, you want to go ahead?
So I think like the main goal is to just have entertainment for people during these trying times. Like people that are suffering due to this pandemic. We just want to give them some hope and happiness with these short films.
Yeah, it's a difficult time. So anything we can do to make kids and adults and teenagers just a little more happier, even if it's just for a couple of seconds, that to us is really, really important. And yeah, so I think that's our main goal, to really give back to the community. And there's no better way to get people to connect than to get them to connect through shorts. And so, yeah, it's great.
So you mentioned that you have like some unused footage that you've been using, but are you also like adding in stuff that you just made, or what's that?
I'd say 90% is made.
Yeah, 90%. It's like 95% is original stuff. We had Shreyas can talk a little bit about this, and you know about this, Revanth, because you've been my friend for a while. That we were actually all working on a short called Cutting Corners, and it didn't end up working out because the story got really, really, really convoluted. Sorry, hold on. Say my disc is almost full. The story ended up getting like really, really convoluted, and so we didn't end up moving forward with it. But we had a lot of really great animation from that. I think, Trace, you could a lot of those clips that we used ended up becoming Square Up, and Trace could probably talk about how he used some of the old clips as inspiration for making new clips for that specific short film.
Like for Square Up, we had like some sequences that they were already animated, but it didn't feel like totally complete. So we would just add things in, like the square stretching the triangle at the end. We just added that in into the story, and also for our latest one release, Stringing Along. Originally, the whole thing was just a loop of the guitar just playing. But then, in the week when we were working on it, we added in all the string breaking and then him fixing the string and made it feel more complete.
Yeah, the story element's really important. So for like Stringing Along, not for Stringing Along, sorry, for Square Up, the elements that we had originally used for Cutting Corners serve a different purpose in Square Up. Because the part that's in Square Up that was from Cutting Corners was actually just a segment of a 5-minute narrative. And what we're doing is we're reusing that segment for like 1-minute narrative. And so things had to change, which required me to go back and edit a lot of the old footage we did, which was really, really hard because a lot of that old footage doesn't really work on the latest software, like the latest Adobe software anymore, because it was made like 2 years ago. And so that was pretty difficult to do. And then also, just having, like Shreya said, going back and reanimating some stuff to fix the current story we have to do with these characters.
So in
Well,
in terms of the animation, you said you're doing these every week, but like how long every day are you spending to work on these, and like how does that compare to time that you spent doing films in the past?
Trace, you wanna?
Yeah. So for like movement and motion, I'm usually spending, I'd say maybe 2 to 3 hours every day, like doing the motion, because the thing is like even though the motion, it looks like when you're just watching, like even just someone walking, when you just look at it, it looks really simple. But when you're animating the motion and doing it every single frame, it takes it's like really tedious, and it takes a long time to make sure everything looks smooth and synced up. So from the motion and movement aspect, that's what's going on. I'm pretty sure like Brandon's part when he's doing the facial expressions, it's a lot more tedious, but he can go into that.
Yeah, it is more tedious for the facial expressions because the way animation works is it's 24 frames per second. Hours are 12 frames per second, which means 12, which is different from Fizz and Right and Wrong, which had varying frame rates.
Yeah, and they had a total of like 15,000 pictures, individual frames.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different, but what we're working with here, it's still like 12 individual images per second. So you need to go in and do the faces really frame by frame, making minor adjustments to each face. So it's tiring. I'd say I'd probably spend about 2 to 3 hours a day on it as well. What about you, as far as
So I probably spend 2 to 3 hours developing the theme over the course of the first 6 days, and then on the last day I spend maybe 2 to 3 hours kind of making that sync up with the animation and adding in embellishments here and there.
Yeah, but we all work pretty efficiently, and because I have friends who are also filmmakers at the high school, and they had all these script ideas, and they were ready to go out and film, and I was even going to help out a little bit on some of them, but because of this shelter in place now, they can't do that. In animation, since everything can be done remotely, we're able to keep making these projects and keep making all these things, and so we know how to work efficiently now in quarantine because of the especially the time constraints that school has on
So I mean, you've obviously made plenty of short films before, but these are a lot shorter than the ones that you've made in the past. So what's the biggest change in terms of like the process you're making now that the length has changed?
You can touch on that a little bit because he was one of the main animators on my last animated short film, just like Shreyas. These two were like the main animators on Right and Wrong. You can talk a little bit about that.
I mean, I don't really
No, because you
changes. I mean, it's definitely harder to convey the story because you have such a smaller amount of time. With Right and Wrong, we definitely had a lot more wiggle room, and even now, some of those scenes were kind of unnecessary, but they like helped kind of reaffirm the main theme of the movie and kind of really show the relationship between the pencil and eraser.
Yeah, I think it depends. Trace, what are your thoughts? Do you prefer this to like the longer form, just the process, not the actual thing, but do you prefer like the process of the longer form?
Wise, I think I would prefer the long one, because the longer ones, like obviously we have more time, so we can develop more ideas within that time and like put them into the film to make it like not necessarily better, but just um, more appealing and more. It helps enhance the story a lot more since we have a lot more time. These shorter ones, I feel like it's kind of rushed. Like the stories themselves are they're not like full stories that you would see in like a book or something. They're just like tiny things, tiny scenes, sort of like that. So story wise, I think I prefer the longer ones since we can develop more in that.
Yeah. Um, I agree. I agree. I think where I'm coming from is I'm kind of like burnt out after Fizzy and Right and Wrong, because we did those two back to back, right? And so that was like a three. Each one took a year and a half, so that's like a 3-year period of just working on long form shorts. So for me, this feels like a lot easier. But I would agree. I think in general, I prefer making longer form short films. But this is a great change of pace because instead of getting, one thing done in 1.5 years, you can get tons of things done in just like 3 months.
And it also forces us to stick to a schedule. In Right and Wrong, the longer ones, we were always like, I think 1 month we did like no work, and then the next month we grinded. So this is definitely more organized.
Yeah, I'm sure Shreyas remembers all about Right and Wrong and how and Fizzy and the rush to get those out. We kept on making progress, obviously, and we'd spend about 2 to 3 hours on it every day. But it was like we were like relaxed about it. And we're like, oh, we don't really need to follow the deadlines we set for ourselves. We still have time. And then in the last month, we were just finishing up the entire short film. So for Right and Wrong, it was like 75% of the movie was done in the last month, which isn't the best way to work. So I think this is forced us to follow that. And so when we get to the longer form short films, eventually after this, which we do have ideas for, we'll be able to follow that more efficiently and maybe not do what we did on Right and Wrong and Fizzy again, because that was exhausting and that killed you. And it was yeah.
Have there been any challenges that you guys have experienced with making these that are specifically related to the quarantine?
No, I think the biggest challenge is just not because Trace and I animate together a lot. My brother lives with me, and so there's no problem there. But Trace and I animate together a lot, and so I don't think there's really been anything that's gotten harder necessarily. But in the beginning, it was a little challenging to adjust to the fact that I couldn't go over to Trace's house, or he couldn't come over to mine, and we couldn't work on it together. Trace, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that because we can't go to anyone's house, it's like normally we would be doing the animation at the same time, so we would animate a scene and then we could make changes instantly and then fix everything up. Right now, like kind of the process is I would animate something and then I would send it over and then after that like it would just be a constant like loop of me sending Brandon files for him to like make sure it's all right. So like it's a lot less efficient from that point, but I don't think that's had a real like it's not really a big challenge and it's not really had a big impact on our work.
Yeah, I think we're just grateful that we can still make stuff in quarantine because even some of my friends are like, oh, well, I got to start learning how to animate now because, like I said, they had scripts that were ready to go, but they can't do anything about that now. And yeah, and, obviously the music stuff can also be done from home. It is a little more difficult.
No, not
really
really.
for you. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you guys think there's any advantages to what you're doing or no? Like
Being in quarantine?
yeah.
More time.
There's a little more time to work on stuff. Aside from that, I think there's probably nothing. What about Trace? What do you think?
Yeah, there's nothing much really. Like just like a slight amount of time because like the school times are a little bit weird, but I don't think that's really a big thing.
School being more lenient has for sure helped.
Mhm.
But aside from that, I don't see any benefits that it's given us. Yeah.
So you've already put out a couple of these, but do you know how many you plan to eventually release?
Well, it kind of depends. Shreyas, Devin, and I were talking about this the other day, and I think right now we have 2 finished. We have a 3rd one that's in post production. It's almost done. We have a 4th and 5th one, which is the Ice and then the Fizzy sequel. Those are currently being worked on and being made. And then we have one more after that that started early development in terms of story. So I'd say like as of right now, there's probably going to be like 6 or 7 of them in total. But I don't know. We might keep continuing with it. It just all kind of depends on whether or not we get another idea for something we wanted to pursue. Because the Fizzy, doing a Fizzy sequel thing kind of came out of nowhere. And that was definitely like my friends just wanting to, because they've been like, memeing it, right? Because it's funny, right? And so it's kind of like, okay, well, we might as well just give it to them at this point because they really want it. And so Porter's already done his voiceovers for the short film, and they've already been sent to me, and we've already done some animation. so yeah, it's pretty cool. And we're he's working on the music, and because of how much more sophisticated as animators we've become since the first Fizzy, the designs are much more improved. They look much, much, much better. Shreyas is actually responsible for redesigning Fizzy, and so it's cool and it's a lot of fun. And so that's probably the one I'm looking the most forward to getting out because I know my friends and I know my family and I know you, right? You like we all kind of have memories of like working on the first Fizzy together. Even the people in our friend group that didn't work on Fizzy, they knew what it was and they would see like our day-to-day kind of like talking about it. And so, I think it's kind of exciting for them too, even though they've just been, memeing it, but it's just kind of fun. And then we're also excited to show Ice, because it's an original story and it's really, really nice. Yeah. And so, yeah, sorry, that was a really long answer to a question that should have to a question that should have been quicker. But yeah, I mean that's it. So we have about, I'd say we're probably gonna make about 7 in total, and then from there we'll see where we go. You wanted something to add real quick?
No, but I think it's also really cool to see the progress on both an animation end and a storytelling end. Yeah, it's just really neat.
And the music.
And the music too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Trace, any other thoughts on that?
No, not really.
Alright, cool.
So do you still plan on making longer length films in the future?
Trace, you can start with that.
Yeah, we were actually discussing. We were just discussing like and planning when we should end these shorts and move on to a longer project, but nothing's really definite right now, so we're not completely sure.
We have a couple of ideas that are cool. Yeah, we're a little more. We don't want to like say what like the long-term projects are going to be yet because they might not happen. But we have a couple of ideas that are interesting and that I think are cool. But definitely the plan is that these quarantines are a temporary thing to keep people who are who are currently stuck at home something to enjoy every week, just a little something, and and yeah, and then after, hopefully, I don't know what the timeline is for California, moving moving out of quarantine. Obviously, they should do it when everything's safe. I think when that happens, we will start working on a longer form short film because we kind of need to be near each other. Trace and me, we need to be in the same area when we're working on this because I feel like with the shorter short films, you can get away with the fact that you're further apart.
Yeah.
But then with longer form, you need to be like right next to each other working on a project, and we only want to do that when the government says it's safe. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I agree.
What would you say is more important? Would you say animation or storytelling is more important?
You need both. I think I think there's like two ways to like answer this question. Kind of, you can have terrible animation and a great story, and it might be okay. It might be okay.
It might be a little hard to understand.
It might be a little hard to understand, but it might be okay. And but then you kind of just need both. I think it's important that if you're gonna have great animation, you need to have a great story. And so I'd say it's more important for you to have bad animation and a great story than great animation and a good and a bad story. I just confused myself there for a second. Okay, either way, it's important to have both. They're both important.
Especially without dialogue.
Yeah, especially without dialogue. That becomes really hard. It's important to have both. You can't have one without the other. We definitely learned that. Yeah, you need both. But there are people who think that just having an animated film that looks nice, an animated short film. I don't know anything about like full-length movies, but an animated short film, an animated short student film, that is like that's all about how good the animation looks. I think it's good to definitely put a lot of effort into the story and characters. It's good to just put effort in everything and have just an all-around great movie. What do you think, Tris?
Yeah, I think I agree with whatever you said. I also think that like specifically for these quarantines, I think that the story is a little bit more important than the animation because we're trying to get across a specific theme or lesson. That being said, in general, I think the animation and story should be on the same level, and the story could be a little bit higher than the animation. But I don't think we should have a really great animation and not a great story.
Yeah, I like what Trey said, that the stories are very important in the quarantines because we're trying to touch people right now during this time and like kind of have them relate to it. And maybe like I'm hoping that like maybe it's inspiring some other people to do something creative right now. Since you're stuck at home, you can, because a lot of people have just been saying, I'm bored at home, I'm bored, I have nothing to do. And to me, that's kind of like, okay, well then,
Find something.
Make something. But nobody seems to want to make anything. That's what it seems like to me. And like, nobody seems to want to make anything. Like you still write your articles. Got them. That's creatively fulfilling. So we're doing this. This is creatively fulfilling. So if you're bored, hopefully this will just push you to be like, hey, you can do something creative while you're in quarantine.
And gives you the chance to
actually. Yeah, and hopefully it'll get you to actually get off your bum and do something.
Okay, so recently you released a live action film called Spring Cleaning. Can you tell the audience about that for a second?
About spring cleaning?
Yeah.
It was it's definitely a live action film. No, I'm just kidding. I'm pretty proud of it, even though it's not great. I'm proud of it. I had a fun time making it, and I made it with my friend Russell Kim. And honestly, it's not that bad of a movie. I make it sound worse than it is. It's actually really, really, for students, it's really, really quite good. And
For your first live action.
yeah,
film,
for
too.
first live action, it's pretty good. And Russell Kim, who also did the narration on my animated short film Right and Wrong. He just did such a masterful job, just like editing it. He's so good at that. He's so insanely good at that, and so I think he definitely saved that project. And he made what could have been a disaster actually a good film, a good student film. And so yeah.
What's the biggest difference between live action and animation?
Shreyas, what do you think? I know you haven't really done live action, but from your perspective, what do you think? And then from your perspective too.
I'm not really sure, like for like these kind of shorts. But like when I'm watching like an animated movie versus a live action movie, I pay a lot more respect to the animated movie, because since I'm more familiar with animation, I know like how long it takes to design it properly and make sure everything like looks smooth, and like it makes sense and the story is good and everything. Live action, I feel like I think it takes less time to work on. It's less tedious, but I still respect animation more.
Yeah, for me, it's always been like, I love both. I don't care, what medium it is, animation or live action. I just love both. It just needs to tell a good story. I can appreciate something like something that I love, like Toy Story and Cars, just like I can appreciate something like Terminator. To me, all three of those movies have compelling stories and compelling characters. They get me really interested. And so the first time when I'm watching a movie, like for the first time, I never think about oh, look at how they did that little detail in the background, because that's how you know that the filmmaker failed at its job. The job is to like get you involved in the story. Now, by the time, if you're like Trace and I, and yeah, even you, and you watch the movie like hundreds of times, that's when you start being like, oh, look at the way they did that. Look at the way they did that. That's masterful. But I think on first watch, I never pick up on that. So really, I love animation and live action. I think they're both amazing. I respect them both pretty equally. I have a soft spot for animation because it's what I've always, kind of loved. But I think I love both of them pretty equally. And yeah, I think the biggest difference for me was the fact that the whole camera, the camera thing is a little bit different, and you got to learn how to use camera lenses, different types of lenses, and you got to learn. Well, I had to learn because we didn't have enough money to hire like a DP. I had to learn like, oh, what does this lens do? What does that lens do? Whereas in animation, you manufacture the lens.
Yeah, you have to create the camera.
Yeah, and so I guess the biggest difference is in live action, you have some stuff to set up. In animation, you have to build the stuff that you want to set up. And that's what I'd probably say.
So, I mean, you've been pretty critical of your live action film, obviously, and some other things. Do you think that having high standards is a good thing, or do you think sometimes you can be like overly critical?
Me specifically, or
I mean, all of you should really.
Oh yeah. You go.
I don't really have much to say for this question. But yeah, if I don't like one note, I'll go back and change the entire score for that one note. And then I'll make him re-edit the film to it, or re-edit the score to the film.
Yeah. What about you, Trish? What do you think?
Animation wise, I think it's good to be like critical of what you're doing, but I don't think it's good to be overly critical, because sometimes when you're overly critical, you lose track and concept of the story, and your details that you're trying to change will they might interfere with the story and drive across like the wrong message or a weaker form of the message. So I think it's good to be critical, but you should also keep in mind like your audience and the story and the concept and everything.
Yeah, I agree with Trace. I think when you're working on something like super long, like Fizz and Right and Wrong, it's easy to start becoming like kind of depressed, like saying, "Oh, we have nothing special," and really it takes involving someone who's never heard of the project and just telling them the basic story and seeing their response. It really re-energizes you, and it's like, okay, well, we actually do have something special. We've just been working on it so long that we can't see that anymore. With spring cleaning, it was definitely Russell, Kim, and I had a great idea, and we are both very proud of the final movie. It just became a thing of like too many cooks in the kitchen, too many people contributing to the screenplay, too many people contributing to the story, and because of that, the message that was driving our motivation, that was driving us to get the film completed, the message of the film,
was slightly overshadowed.
it was a little, no, it wasn't overshadowed, it was just muddled, kind of.
Yeah.
It was unclear, and that was a complaint that I heard a lot and that I took to heart. I was overly critical of it in the beginning, and then I didn't watch it for about 2 months. I recently rewatched it for the Los Gatos High School Film Festival, and I was pleasantly surprised that I actually enjoy it significantly more now. And maybe that's just because I kind of took a break from it and then went back. So I enjoy it now, and I'm proud of it now. Yeah. But like Trey said, I think you should always be very, very critical of yourself and the work that you're producing. You shouldn't let it ruin or make you lose confidence in the story that you're telling.
What's the balance between making a story that you like and making one that the audience can understand?
What do you think? That was actually a really good question.
Yeah, that was a great question.
Shreyas, what do you think?
I don't know. You're like mostly the mind behind the story, so I think you should.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. The way I see it is, if you think the idea is cool, there will be at least one more person who will also agree with you, and
then there will be one person who hates it.
And then there'll be more than one. There'll be like hundreds of people that hate it, and then there'll be that one guy who's like, "Oh, that was pretty good." and then so you make it for the one guy, right? So really, you make it for yourself. You see how people respond. If they like it, they like it. If they hate it, they hate it. We're not like a professional studio. We're student-led, and so we don't really have budgets to worry about. That's definitely something that's more of like a major film production studio thing. But I'd imagine that if the filmmaker thinks it's cool, then there's probably at least a couple, like hundreds more people that also agree and think that it's a great idea. Like, I'm not sure how many people thought Star Wars was good when they first saw it. Not when they first saw it, but when they first heard about it, they're like, "Oh, what? Star Wars? What's that?" Right? And then they, slowly but surely, word of mouth spread that it was actually really, really good. And so you can also take an idea that people think they hate initially, and then if you present it well enough with developed characters, maybe they'll really, really like it. So, yeah.
How much do you consider like the feedback of the audience when you're making something?
We definitely go ahead.
Well, I feel that since we're doing this mainly to help them out, to provide them with entertainment, I feel like we really kind of take that into account when we're generating the stories for our next projects. That's why they decided to make a sequel for Fizzy 2.
I think it's important. I don't think you should be afraid of the audience. I don't think that, like, if you're trying to tell, like, a personal story or a story that you think is really great, I think you should still do it, whether or not you think the audience will be interested. But you should do it in a compelling enough way that it can take someone who'd be, like, the person who's like, "Oh, that sucks," and at least, invest them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about Square Up and how we thought the message and the story was very clear, but apparently it wasn't. And looking back, I can definitely see that it wasn't. And so now we took that into account, and so we definitely review everything with other people who are not involved in the project before we send it out. And we're like, okay, does this make sense? Does this part make sense? What doesn't make sense? What can we fix? What can we do better? Audience feedback definitely matters to us.
Okay, I guess I'll just wrap it up here. Are any of you guys considering like doing this beyond high school, or is it more of a fun thing that you're doing on the side right now?
Go ahead. Well, this is kind of a fun thing for me. I am going to continue pursuing my musical career, but I'm more interested in neurosurgery, so that's ultimately where I want to go. These guys, I'm pretty sure, want to pursue a full-on career in filmmaking.
Yeah, I definitely want to pursue it. It's something that I'm really interested in. I've been making short films, animated stuff for a very, very long time. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm really interested in, character design and animation, and I think that's one of the things I want to pursue later.
Yeah. I think we're all, I think Chris and I are both very interested in pursuing this as some sort of career.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's all I have. You want to just promote where you can find these short films again, real quick?
Oh yeah, so Quarantunes, Fizz Quarantunes. You can find them on Fizz's Instagram, Fizz's Twitter, and Fizz's Facebook. So on Facebook, I believe we're at Fizz Shorts. On Twitter, we're at Fizz Shorts, and then on Instagram, we're at Fizz Animation Studios. And that's where you can. That's where you can find it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Revanth. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Yep.
Your questions were fantastic.
Yeah,
I was not.
I wasn't expecting.
Those were like some really in-depth questions. Thank you so much,
Okay.
man.
Yep. Thanks, guys.